Today's teaching is maybe a bit controversial because it doesn't fall in line with traditional teachings, not only within religion, but within spirituality as well. It does not fall in line with traditional teachings, which is one of the reasons why I like it so much. I've been, each day I read from a different topic. And one of the topics I've been investigating a little bit is philosophy. So I've been reading Samuel Putnam's 400 Years of Free Thought. And free thought is a type of philosophy. And in his book, I would imagine it's a thick book, he discusses some of the philosophers and adventurers of the past who challenged the status quo. And that's what the free thought movement is all about, challenging the status quo. So he took a little something, and I'll probably mispronounce this, but the philosopher's name was Goethe, or Goethe. And he writes that nature is the garment we see God by. God is not on a throne, but is an eternal presence, and there is no need of any priest, only the open soul. Now, I mentioned stigmata earlier because it was built on the premise of the Gospel of Thomas. And I was actually looking for that particular quote that suggests that we don't need the church or a priest or anything. And that's what he is saying here with that little bit there, is that we don't need a priest. And that would make a lot of people upset, particularly the preachers and ministers and the establishment, so to speak. An old term there, 50s term, establishment. It was at the 70s, I don't know. And what caught my attention with this, of course that did, but what caught my attention with this was nature is the garment we see God by. Nature. And we're learning more about nature as it flows into the spiritual realm. So I want to get your thoughts about that. What are your thoughts about God being, or nature being, that garment? Now remember, garment is something that we wear. Like my vest here, it's a garment. So God wears nature. And what we often seek is, okay, if God is wearing a garment, nature, what does God look like underneath the garment? So, would anyone like to venture any thoughts?
Oh, no, not on that one.
No, well, yeah, maybe not quite that, but.
You don't have to go in
Right.
that direction.
Right.
It's just the idea.
I saw something this morning, very much the exact same thing. And it was picture of a Native American woman. And the comment, the words said, God, nature is my God. Exactly those words, nature is my God. I saw that this morning. So it's interesting. And so as the Native American people, if you want to use them as an example, lived that. They lived that. They respect what nature God is and brings to them. They respect it, they live by it. They don't take more than they need. They give what they have, all of that. So that's what I was reminded of when you mentioned, when you said that, because it's exactly what I saw this morning. So, I mean, I'm sure there's other people could explain it more in depth maybe than that part of it, but those were the first people that I thought of, because if you do I live that way? Probably not so much. Because we're certainly very used to our creature comforts, but it's certainly a mindset that is clean and pretty precise for the most part, I would say, in a lot of ways. The sun comes up in the morning, you know, it goes down at night. You have structure, you have reason, you have purpose. All of those things that get you through life. Not that there isn't any issues, I'm sure there are. But hopefully the wise ones, the wise people. My understanding is that in many tribes, people were born with certain gifts and they were recognized as the child was born or the person was born. Well, this person is really good at this, and this person is really good at this. And as a community, they survived by all showing their purpose, having their purpose, doing what they had to do. Not sure if that's what you mean, but.
Not what I mean by
Right.
it. It's how
That's how
you
I'm, yes.
interpret it. That's the important thing.
That is how I interpret it.
Because I'm going to suggest, or I'm going to respond by saying, so many people get this, use this idea of they respect nature. Okay. But that doesn't really say anything. Just means they respect nature. Okay, thank you for this. What they really mean by that is that nature, or God, provides for them. Nature nurtures them. And that's what they're saying. Because of our Western culture and everything, we use the term respect. However, what happens with respect, everybody has that expectation of respect, and it's their interpretation of respect that they use. Which is why I suggest we just take respect and put it out and put nurture in. Because nurture gives us a more definable picture for us to see. And it speaks of God in a way that Jesus was trying to get across when he talked about the sparrow falling. If God notices a sparrow that falls, how much more will God notice you? And that's the idea. Nurturing, taking notice, responding. And for myself, I'm not saying that anything you said was incorrect, but for myself, it speaks volumes. It speaks volumes. And one of the things that hampers us is Western thinking. Western thinking. And the native peoples, and that's the way I'm going to term it, the native peoples, because I want to include the native Bushmen in Africa and Australia and New Zealand and all those other places. They were nurtured by nature. They didn't waste because of disrespect. they didn't waste because it did not nurture them. It did not serve them to be wasteful. It did not serve them to be wasteful. And the nice thing about nurturing is if it's not going to serve you, it's not going to serve them either. So, does anybody else have any thoughts they'd like to add to that?
I think I do.
Go ahead.
I think that, like, if you really look deep into nature, you can get a better understanding of yourself and, like, the way your body flows, and maybe your mind flows and your life flows, and everything in the universe can flow if you look deeper into the way things work in nature, I guess. I don't even know how to explain that, but I hope you know what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah.
Spiritualism actually touches on that. They don't get deep into it. They just skim the surface with their natural principles and everything. They don't really get into it. But you're absolutely right. You want to know how you should live your life? Study nature. Look at what happens in nature. You want to know what's happening in your life and how to have a better life? Study nature. Because what is it that happens in nature? They all find the path of least resistance. And the path of least resistance does not necessarily indicate surrender. Does not indicate surrender. It just means that this is what's working now, and when it no longer works, you take another tact. You find something that does work and you follow along with that. And when it no longer works, you do something else. Is that what you were implying, suggesting?
Kind of. I mean, there's a lot you could say about it, I think, but that's one of them.
You're right. We don't have enough time to cover all of it. But you are moving in the right direction. You've got the right idea. You're developing the right mindset. Cool. And let me see here. He said something else. And this is the controversial part. Matter and spirit are both eternal. Both eternal. Having no beginning and being without end. They are two different expressions of the same wholeness. The same wholeness. Matter and spirit, both being eternal. Now that goes against what's typically taught. And the real question about this is that I'm going to ask you is how might that affect the soul? Because the soul reincarnates. And when we communicate with souls, we see them in a familiar fashion. However, the question is, after they reincarnate, would we see them in the familiar way that we did before? Now, this isn't a yes or no question. It's just something for you to think about. And, what thoughts come to mind? And I'll start with Sandy.
A lot of thoughts come to mind. The first thing, matter and spirit are both eternal. I just love that. And the reason, I mean, on my simple mind, I'm not higher educated or anything, but I always think of matter. When I think of matter, I think of science. And when I think of spirit, I think of spirit. I think of spirituality. And to me, that just marries the two. I mean, it just says they're both the same, they're just different words. And I think what a simple truth that is, but it's very profound. I really liked it. Trying to think of the next question you asked, but I don't know. I just feel like it was it was answering a great truth or confirming a great truth, um, in a simple way. I always, I mean, when I think of nature, I think of the world. I guess that although one could probably have different interpretations of the word nature, but I think again of our world and where we live and so it's the garment we see God by. I guess, well, nature is cyclical, like we've talked about, and I know there's a message in there that relates to the God part of it. Maybe the cycle is our growth, our own growth. So, spiritual growth. Um, I don't remember what your question at the end was. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. That's okay. Doesn't make a difference. Because the interesting thing about all of this, including what you brought up, is that it pairs up with some of the spirit teachings that we have received. And one of the spirit teachings had suggested that the soul just wraps itself in the body. The body is a part of the soul. It's not separate from the soul as a lot of teachings suggest. One of them saying that the soul is imprisoned in the body. And they tell us, no, it's not. The body is just is part of the soul. They're not separate. They're just part of the soul, which ties in with this. And the idea with this is that if matter and spirit are both different aspects of the whole, and both are eternal, okay. Now, we have reincarnation. So when we are born into another form, and then exit that form and resume our teachings, because all of us may already be high or powerful teachers or healers, and when we exit this realm, when we move back into the other realm, or as the flow, the wave moves us to a different shore, and we resume our duties, how will we appear?
Well, I'm reminded of the teachers that you channel. I mean, they're giving you, do they give you, because some of them, it sounds like they haven't come back in a really long time. So they're using the last incarnation, their last vision, the last of what they look like, the last time they were here. They're using that as your image. I would imagine if they had moved on, they would, I just feel like it would be the last one.
That's a good assumption. That's a good assumption, because we really don't know what the soul looks like. We only have our expectations of what the soul looks like. And our perception, like everything else, it lives up to our expectations. So very good. I like that. I like that. So, did you have any thoughts, Rachel? How might this affect reincarnation?
As far as like being in tune with nature,
Well, if matter and spirit are essentially the same, just different aspects of it, but they're essentially the same, like an Oreo cookie,
yeah.
essentially the same, and we reincarnate from one life to the next. Okay, how would that affect how we appear when we are
Oh,
when we
I
resume
think
our teachings and our spirit teachers?
that reminds me of Nikola Tesla, and he said if you want to understand things, you think in a matter of frequency and vibration. And so I think maybe the way we appear depends on the way we vibrate. And the way we vibrate is the way things come across. Like going back to like how nature works as far as, I don't know, it's so hard to explain. I don't even know if I understand it, but I think it's frequency and vibration, basically. You can
It's good.
elaborate.
That's good, and it makes sense. It does make sense. So, good, I like that. I like that. And what are your thoughts, Beth? How would that affect us as we reincarnate?
Well, when you first said that the matter and the spirit, I immediately saw the yin yang symbol. So, what I've experienced myself is there's a recognition when I've seen an energy field, and somehow I knew it when I'm in this physical form. And then there's been like the reverse. How many times I've seen someone, met someone, or saw someone, and there was a glimmer, there was a recognition. Might have been something in the eyes, might have been something about their physical frame, but it's like it was trying to awaken a memory. I know you from somewhere. I've met you somewhere. And when it's mutual, that is like magic. Even if you're only passing in a split second, when it's a mutual recognition, it's like, wow. Oh, and there have been times when someone's recognized me in a physical form, but myself has had no recollection. Their soul recognized mine, but it wasn't reversed. Okay, just accept it. I'll know. I'll know down the road. I'll know down the road. Whether it's in this form or it's in another form. That'll come together.
You know what's really interesting is each answer each of you gave me, I've read in a book like Edmund's Spiritualism, Kardec's Spirit's Book, or Grieber's Spirit World. I've read those explanations in those books. And typically I come across them after we have to have the spirit teachings. And it's like, oh, cool. So yes, vibration, frequency, resonance, a recognition, because, well, Diane was here asking about whether she would meet her husband again. And how did she meet him before? There was some sense of recognition there that drew them together.
Right.
And that's what happens with us each time we reincarnate here, and each time we reincarnate over there. It's always back to square one, which can be interesting because it tells me that everything has a beginning and an end. But what has a beginning and an end is merely that facade or that aspect or that particular experience, because every ending is a beginning and every beginning is an ending. Could cause you to just kind of collapse trying to figure it out. Never ending. But that's the idea here. And with matter, saying that matter is eternal. Now everything is based on energy, yes? So the question is, can you destroy energy? Can you create energy? Here's a good one for you. Have you ever seen energy?
I've seen what I interpreted as energy.
It's results. We always see the results of energy, whether it's light, whether it's smoke, whether it's heat. We never see energy. We can see the transition of energy or the transformation of energy, but we never see energy. Never. We always see the results. And the interesting thing is the results of energy are expressed somewhere further down the line as another transformation of energy. But what happens with paper when it burns? Becomes ash. What happens to the ash?
Dissolves eventually.
It's absorbed. Energy just becomes something else. And with the soul and matter both being energy, okay, what it tells me is that the soul is still a vehicle, just as the body is a vehicle. So with the soul being a vehicle, what is actually at the center of the soul? You don't have to answer that question. Rachel's going, whoop. I mean, that is really something, you know. This is what happens to me when I read these things. I get these impossible questions. You know, okay, so what is actually at the center of this? If the soul is just another garment, what's wearing it?
Divinity.
You can call it divinity. You can call it energy. But since we cannot see divinity or energy, we will never know. All we can call it is that all-pervasive whatever.
Unknown. The mighty unknown.
The mighty unknown. Exactly. Exactly. So, does anybody have any thoughts they'd like to share? And Rachel's right in front of me, so any last thoughts, Rachel?
I don't know. I think you're right about that. Like the fire was probably a good example of energy, but that's probably my thought on it.
They're similar to mine, so great minds think alike, and we all have great minds, apparently. So, yeah. How about you, Beth? Any last thoughts?
Nope. Not at
Should I check you for a temperature? Or have you been hanging out with Ken? Oh, all right. How about you, Sandy? Any last thoughts?
Yeah, and also what you just said, so in this physical realm that we're in, we cannot see energy. We cannot see into that soul. I don't even know if we would have words to describe it. But my question is, for instance, your guides, the spirit guides who come through and speak through you, can they see it? Because
don't
they're
know.
not inhibited by a body, or they have an infinite view. Just curious. Just
Write that down. Write that down, Sandy. Write that question down and ask it. The next speaker.
Yeah,
Write it down and
Yeah.
ask it.
good
Well,
question.
here's the thing to keep in mind. If you can see the soul, then there's substance. So there's matter.
okay.
And as Rachel would say, it's matter at a different vibration, a different frequency. It's like sounds. There are certain sounds that we don't hear, but the dogs hear.
True. Yeah.
Or we're all over 30, so watching these videos and such, they say there are sounds that people over 30 can't hear, but people under 30 can't hear. I mean, all we have to deal with is matter in a different form. It's essentially, based on this and what I've read in other places. It's not just here, but I've read this in other places that hint at it. Spiritual writings, scientific writings, PMH Atwater's Future Memory, she suggests, no, it's not her, DeBasey suggests that the universe is all light. And that we are merely holograms existing due to events creating interference patterns, which could very well be gravity wells, because a black star, a black sun, bends light. There's so many ways to explain it. PMH Atwater suggests, well, she read somewhere, an associate of hers, when she was writing, suggested that we are crystallized light. Even when we were going through Hertop's Book of Knowledge, Keys of Enoch, again, this suggestion of crystallized light, that we are light. And light has a very fine substance to it. But what causes that light? We don't know, because we can't see energy. We only see energy in transformation or transition. We see it burn as fire. We see it in the air as smoke. We may experience as radiation sickness. Energy is the one thing that can never, ever be seen. It can only be demonstrated to exist by the results of its release. And all of this just came to me. I didn't think of this before. All of this just came to me. So it would stand to reason that, you know, the souls, they're limited by the rules in their realm, just as we are limited by the rules in our realm. Can we walk on air? We can if there's thick enough plexiglass underneath us. So, you know, we're each of us in our respective realms are bound by the rules of those realms, are bound by nature in those realms. Which is why I asked the question a few weeks ago about if the body is composed of microbes, a majority of the body composed of microbes, would the soul also be composed of similar microbes? There's no right or wrong answer to it because it's not something that can be demonstrated.
Mhm. Mhm.
Except for maybe a scientist on the soul realm, but you know, once they get to that realm, they're going to go along with their expectations, which is that our goal is to get from this realm to that realm. While spirit teachers are telling us that our goal is to progress, whether we're in this realm or that realm. A lot of religions teach us that our goal is to get from this realm to that realm, that we need to behave in this realm so that we will be rewarded in that realm. And our spirit teachers are telling us that's wrong. The goal is to grow, to continue.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's our expectations that mislead us. So, any last thoughts from anybody? And I want to thank you for allowing me to share this with you and to really stretch your thoughts. It's your input and your responses are very much appreciated. Thank you. And now we'll let all of you stand up and stretch